Hello and welcome back to Britain's Golden Era, where we like to explore cultural history across different countries and regions within the UK through their food, as we believe food is a great meeting point between the people, the history of an area, and social factors that shaped it. Today we're looking at 10 cracking Cumbrian dishes. First, a little about the area. Cumbria is a region in the northwest of the UK that borders into Scotland. Cumbria is known for the Lake District, which is a very popular tourist area of the UK, which is one of the UK's biggest national parks and has UNESCO World Heritage designations. It is also known for its literary history, with Beatrix Potter and William Wordsworth both writing there. It is also famous for Hadrian's Wall, a huge wall that the Romans built to separate their conquered parts of the UK from Scotland, which they feared. You can still visit the wall today if you wish. The area also has an industrial history in wool, mining, and more recently, nuclear energy. Truly the heart of Cumbrian cuisine is the port of Whitehaven, which inspired a lot of the dishes that you will see today. The first dish on our list is Cumberland pie. Cumberland pie has been around since the medieval period in the UK and is a variation on the traditional cottage pie, which you may have heard of, adding a cheese and breadcrumb finish to the top of the pie that makes it unique. Originally, Cumberland pie started out as a pastry-covered pie filled with spiced meats and fruits, but evolved into what it is today. The name is somewhat of a trick, as it is not really a pie, but rather a casserole. It contains meat, usually beef, vegetables, mashed potatoes, cheese, and breadcrumbs, and then is baked in the oven to form layers, with the meat and vegetables forming one layer, then the mashed potato, then the cheese and breadcrumb topping. At number 2 is Cumberland sausage. Cumberland sausages are a delicacy of the Lake District / wider Cumbrian region, and are known for their high meat content, avoiding things like gristle and rusk. They date back to the 16th century, and local folklore suggests they came to Cumbria from what we would now think of as German miners during the Elizabethan period. It is believed that this is how the sausages have their distinctive coiled way. They were made from the Cumberland pig, a type of pig native to the area, but that went extinct in the 1960s. During the 1700s, the Cumbrian port of Whitehaven was one of the largest in the world, and so it brought many spices from faraway places such as black pepper, which is important as it influenced the flavour of the Cumbrian sausage. The sausage is often handmade, which gives it its unique properties. The sausages were often heavily salted and spiced and then hung up to air dry, which would preserve them for a long period of time. They now have protective geographical indication status, meaning that only sausages made in Cumbria with the same techniques can call themselves Cumbrian sausages. Separate but related, Cumberland sauce has its own unique history, which connects it to the Hanover region of Germany. The sauce is commonly associated with Ernest Augustus, the Duke of Cumberland and the brother of King George IV, with legend saying he invented Cumberland sauce. Not in the form we think of it now, but in a less refined version. The sauce as we think of it now is made up from red currant jelly, port wine, orange juice or zest, mustard, and then either ground ginger or cloves, and it is usually served with meat, such as the aforementioned Cumberland sausage. It has roots in medieval sauces such as camelline sauce. However, the first mention of it as we currently think of it is in a French cookbook on English cuisine, calling it Cumberland sauce in 1904. At number 3 is Cumberland Tatty Pot. This is a cousin to the famous Lancashire hot pot and is generally seen as more hearty than that. Cumberland Tatty Pot is a slow-cooked meat and potato stew, often including black pudding, as well as mutton or lamb, and sometimes beef. Unlike in Lancashire hot pot, the potatoes are thickly cut. In the region, it's often served with pickled beetroot or pickled red cabbage. A rivalry emerges between Cumberland and Westmoreland over who originates the dish, as both claim it as their own. However, in Westmoreland, it is often made with beef shin alongside the lamb. Traditionally, it was a meal that could be cooked all day inside a peat fire, whilst the family would be out working in the fells, being a nice evening meal for when they returned from work. There is also a strong social connection to the dish made through society beanos, which were large village gatherings or hunt meets. The most famous tatty pot in history was made in 1954 in Coldbeck to commemorate the centenary of the hunt at John Peel. Local women reportedly had to peel half a ton of potatoes to feed the crowds. It is rare within British cooking for the mixing of different types of meats to occur. However, here, you have the mixing of 3 different types of meat. You have black pudding, which is made from pig's blood, so you have pork. You have lamb as the traditional meat used in it, and often sometimes a combination with beef, so that can be a combination of 3 different types of meat. At number 4 is perhaps the strangest dish on this list, and that is Easter ledge pie or pudding. Easter ledge pie or pudding is a dish deeply tied to Easter and is seen as cleansing the blood after winter. It is made by boiling or baking wild bistot leaves with oats, barley, eggs, onions and herbs. The name comes from the local name for bistot, a plant also known as pudding grass. It is a quintessential Lake District / Cumbrian dish, and sometimes even a Lancashire staple, deeply rooted in local foraging food practices as well as rural folklore. To wit, within local folklore, there is a strong practice of eating young greens. In spring springtime. If you're enjoying the video and want to learn more about British culinary cultural heritage, then please hit the subscribe button. We make new videos each and every week. We're shifting gears a little earlier than normal to talk about Cumbrian desserts, as really the region is most known for these. Cumbria and the Lake District is a dessert lover's paradise. At number 5 is gingerbread. Gingerbread, specifically Cumbrian gingerbread or Grashmere gingerbread, differs to other forms of gingerbread you may have come across, such as the Cornish fairing from our video on that, which is on the channel should you wish to watch a video about Cornish dishes. It is also different other types of gingerbread in that it is closer to a flapjack. Grashmere gingerbread contains brown sugar, large quantities of ginger obviously, flour and butter. The history of Cumbrian gingerbread is a tale of personal resilience and is intrinsically linked to Sarah Nelson, a woman who lost her children to illness and who was facing financial ruin before she began selling her recipe for gingerbread to tourists and locals from a tree stump. The origins of gingerbread in the UK are widely tied into the trade of spices. It was heavily done in the Cumbrian port of Whitehaven. The popularity of this form of gingerbread came back during the Victorian era, as tourists were able to travel to the Lake District by steam trains and would go on pilgrimages to the grave of William Wordsworth, often eating gingerbread from Sarah's endeavour afterwards. This type of gingerbread was also used to pay rush bearers within local churches, which were children who would bring in fresh rush to cover the unpaved parts of church floors. The current recipe is a closely guarded secret, and for those wanting to try it on your next trip to the Lake District or broader Cumbria, you must travel to Sarah Nelson's old house, which is one of only 2 licensed places to get this type of gingerbread in the Lake District or anywhere in the UK, though it would be advisable to book ahead or get there early, as there is usually massive queues. At number 6 is Borrowdale Tea Loaf. Borrowdale Tea Loaf follows in the traditions of Yorkshire and Wales, both of which we have videos about on the channel as well. Borrowdale Tea Loaf is again a product of the spice trade in Whitehaven, a Cumbrian port that brought in spices and teas from faraway lands. The loaf itself is made up of soft brown sugar, beaten egg, or plain flour and bicarbonate of soda, as well as dried fruit and strongly brewed black tea, usually an Earl Grey or Cumbrian blend. The fruit is soaked in the tea before being added in order to plump up the fruit, and as far as fruitcakes go, this is traditionally fat-free. This made it popular during wartime rationing. The origins of the loaf date back to the 1800s and has been around for hundreds of years since. It is kept alive by a number of farms in the Cumbrian area who serve the traditional recipe to visitors and walkers, specifically the Yew Tree Farm. Many locals believe the taste of the cake improves if it is left in an airtight container for a few days after baking. It is often eaten on special occasions such as birthdays and anniversaries. At number 7 is Cumberland Rum Nicky. Cumberland Rum Nicky is a lattice-topped fruit tart, once again deeply tied to the port of Whitehaven and the spice trade. The name is debated amongst people. Some people think the term Nicky comes from the idea of sailors stealing handfuls of ginger and rum to make the dessert at home, whereas others think it comes from the fact that the top of the pie is notched, and so has nicks. The rum that makes up the massive key ingredient of the dish came from the Caribbean and was traded in the port of Whitehaven. Despite the tropical ingredients, this was seen as a working man's delight and found a home in West Cumbrian coastal communities, being seen as a high-energy treat for sailors and miners. The filling is chopped dates, chopped apricots, stemmed ginger, rum, dark brown sugar, and unsalted butter, and the lid of the pie is traditional pastry. The lattice allows the sugar to caramelise, turning it into a sauce, along with the rum that is poured over the dish before baking. Usually it is served with Cumberland rum butter, which is a blend of brown sugar, rum and butter. The double rum experience reflects a lot about Cumbrian hospitality. At number 8 is Suri pie. This type of pie is a unique dessert which pairs a short crust pastry base with a fruit-filled, often rhubarb, innard, and then a spice-sponged batter made of cinnamon and ginger on top to give it a unique appearance and texture. It is also believed to have medieval origins and was popularised by the Beatrix Potter, Peter Rabbit fame, and was in her story Tale of Pie and Patty Pan. The story captures a social etiquette and traditional foods of the village at that time. At number 9 is sticky toffee pudding. Sticky toffee pudding is a famous dessert that many of you may have heard of and is seen as quintessentially British. However, its origins lie in Cumbria, though that's fiercely debated. The first reference to sticky toffee pudding comes from the 1970s, wherein a chef created what he called icky sticky toffee pudding, with a recipe so secret he kept it hidden in a vault. However, he would later admit he got the recipe from a woman in Lancashire, who got it from a Canadian Air Force pilot during World War II. In 1989, Howard and Jean Johns began baking this in their shop to sell to tourists and campers. This then brought it to worldwide fame over time. If you go to Cumbria or the Lake District and go to any pub, you will likely find this on the menu. It is a pride of the area. It is made with dates, boiling water, bicarbonate of soda, butter, brown sugar, eggs, flour, and black treacle or molasses for our American friends. The sauce is typically made from butter, brown sugar, heavy cream, and treacle. And at number 10 is Kendal Mint Cake. Kendal Mint Cake is a champion among Cumbrian cuisine and is well known in the high altitude mountaineering community, and it is a cake that went up Everest. It is a glucose-based energy bar that has been a staple for mountaineers and explorers for over 150 years. Despite its name, it's not a cake at all, and is in fact a grainy confectionery. It was created by accident by Joseph Whipper when he overboiled a sugar solution for glacier mints in 1869. It was used on a number of Arctic expeditions such as Ernest Shackleton's 1914 to 1917 Imperial Transantarctic Expedition for its energy storage, as well as the aforementioned 1953 Everest ascent by Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay on their first historical summit of Mount Everest. It is a key component of high-altitude rations and is made up from very simple ingredients such as water, glucose syrup, sugar and peppermint oil, and has variations that include things like fondant and chocolate, and is a must-try for any trips to the Lake District or Cumbria. And now we have it. 10 cracking Cumbrian dishes that you can try on your next visit to Cumbria or the Lake District. We've had stories from the monumental to the deeply personal, and seen the rich cultural history of the people and the region through their food. Whether you want to eat gingerbread and see Wordsworth's grave, or want to eat some rum nicky and go out on one of the many lakes of the Lake District, there is something for everyone in Cumbria. If you like what we do celebrating the different regions and countries of the UK through their food and cultural heritage, and want to continue learning about these fascinating tales through different parts of the UK, then hit the subscribe button as we do weekly videos, so be sure to turn on notifications for that. New videos every Tuesday. If you love Cumbria or are planning a trip to it, or just live there and want to show off, please comment on this video with your stories and share it so more people can see how great Cumbria is. If we missed anything off, please let us know about that as well in the comments. And as always, if you like this video, please give it a like. It all helps us to grow, reach more people, and to teach more people about quirky, interesting, and delicious British food. Thank you for your time, and see you next week when we explore Northumbria and the dishes of Newcastle and the North East. Goodbye.